Gibson, and I'm Kimberly Deener.
The purpose of this video is understanding disabilities that contribute to negative behavior in the classroom as well as at home.
I'm Deener, special education teacher with Shelby County Schools. As a special education teacher, you often deal with disabilities that not only affect a child's academics, but also their behavior. As a special education teacher, one of the most commonly diagnosed disabilities is ADHD. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Some of the characteristics that I see in ADHD are children who are very impulsive. They often act without thinking. In addition to that, they don't get along well with peers. They don't have many relationships. They don't play well on the playground. Often children with ADHD have difficulty at home. They show aggression. They do not follow directions at school or at home. They have a very difficult time being organized, turning in homework assignments, turning in everyday assignments. In addition to, their rooms often are chaotic, as well as in their desk. It's not organized. Things are missing. Let me show you what ADHD looks like.
9-year-old Samantha is always on the go. She acts like she's driven by a motor. It's easy to see how her behaviour can get Sam into trouble at school and make life unbearable at home. Mum Michelle has great difficulty controlling Sam. She's had years of parenting courses, but none have helped, because Sam has a brain disorder that profoundly affects the way she thinks and behaves. Sam was diagnosed with Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD, last week, and psychiatrist Kevin Appleton is giving her a checkup before prescribing medication. ADHD affects the parts of Sam's brain that manage and organise her thoughts.
Well done.
Although she has normal intelligence, Sam finds it hard to concentrate on one idea at a time. She's easily distracted, and she acts on impulse. Her brain doesn't seem to tell her to think about the consequences of her behaviour, which means she's always in trouble.
Ow! Don't hit! Down. Hop down, please.
Okay.
Whee! Thank you.
Curiously, Sam's hyperactive because parts of her brain are actually underactive. She's constantly seeking stimulation, trying to kickstart her brain to get it into focus. A bit like revving up a motor to keep it from stalling.
The hardest thing with Sam is the energy, being on the go and not doing what she's told. She'll see something that she wants to do and she'll get sidetracked from what she's supposed to be doing. It's sort of very difficult to control that all the time.
About 1 in 25 children are affected by ADHD. That's 1 in every classroom in New Zealand. They're much more demanding on parents than other children because they don't think before they act and they require constant supervision.
She's got no concept of danger, and this causes problems when she's out playing. She'll climb trees sort of higher than what she's capable of, and she'll run out onto the road. She's into running away at the moment. It's happening on quite a frequent basis, sort of 3 or 4 times a week, when she's upset or when she's in trouble especially. So she'll walk along the tops of fences and stuff like that, yeah. I've had problems with her stealing now since she was 4. I've had her at the police twice. She's very violent towards her brother. She's not so violent towards me. Most of it is in play, which is still not acceptable. She can't grasp the concept that you just don't play like that. With the social side of things, there's a lot that she still needs to learn that she can't grasp the hang of. And without learning these things and without getting, a reasonable education, I really don't know where she's going to end up.
Another disability we often see in special education is emotional disturbance, also known as ED. Students who exhibit ED behaviors will show physical and verbal aggression. They often use profanity toward other children as well as staff at school and parents. In addition to verbal aggression, they show physical aggression. Physical aggression looks like fighting, throwing chairs, turning over tables. Also, students with emotional disturbance will harm themselves, often talk about suicide, not wanting to be alive, not having friends. They have a difficult time at school academically, have a difficult time following directions. This is probably one of the saddest disabilities that we see. And as educators, it is our responsibility to find ways to help these students succeed, both academically and behaviorally. They have a right to a free, appropriate public education. And as often as we can, we need to make sure that these students remain in their least restrictive environment, the regular ed classroom.
Students who have emotional behavioral disorders are often categorized as having emotional disturbances. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA, emotional behavioral disorder is defined as a condition exhibiting one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time and to a marked degree that adversely affects a child's educational performance. The first characteristic is the inability to learn that can't be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. The second characteristic is the inability to have interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. Finally, the third characteristic is inappropriate behavior or feelings under normal circumstances. The specific causes of emotional behavior disorder are often hard to find. But the relationships between causal factors are becoming much more clearer. Children who have been physically abused have a higher probability of being identified with emotional behavioral disorder. Not only has abuse been linked to EBD, but poverty has also been linked as a possible cause. Children with emotional behavior disorder have a tendency to yell, talk out of turn in class, and complain. Children with EBD often get excluded from group activities due to their behavior. Children with EBD tend to not complete their assignments on time or at all. There are no certain physical characteristics to identify children with emotional behavior disorder. Now we'll discuss some specific emotional behavior disorders. Anxiety disorders are an example of an emotional behavioral disorder. Another example of an emotional behavior disorder is bipolar disorder. Conduct disorder, a way of showing anger and aggression, is another example of emotional behavior disorders. Obsessive compulsive disorder is another category under EBD. Children with EBD are known for throwing temper tantrums and crying during class. children with emotional behavior disorders are still children and deserve to be loved and cherished. They didn't choose the life that was dealt to them, and sometimes they don't understand why they are the way they are.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Deener, and as a special education teacher, I see a lot of disabilities in students, such as ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and ED, emotional disturbance. While some believe that the use of medicine to combat these disabilities can be useful, it is unethical for teachers and administration to suggest these methods. However, children often benefit from multi-tiered interventions, such as the support of behavior specialists, the advice of medical professionals, and parental and structural school support.
Aren't you going to play soon?
In about a week, Sam's going to start taking Ritalin, a powerful stimulant similar to cocaine.
Hopefully, once we get her settled on it, that we'll see some improvement with her concentrating, with her energy levels, sort of tone it down a bit, and she'll be more compliant with what she does around the home and at school. Over the last few years, it's taken a lot of energy on my part and getting to the point where I can't cope with it anymore. So the Ritalin is coming at the right time.
Kyle, now 4, has been on Ritalin since he was 2. To diagnose someone with ADHD at such a young age is highly controversial. But Kyle's had serious behavioural problems since he could first walk at 10 months old. Without Ritalin, he's almost unmanageable.
Quickly, one play and then it's out. Don't be stupid.
By the time he turned 2, Kyle had started a fire, driven Mum's car in the driveway, and had 3 major head injuries from climbing dangerously. Although his medication does make Kyle more controllable, he's still on the go all the time and he's very aggressive.
I'm Kimberly Dean, and we're going to discuss what autism is. Autism is a developmental disability that affects how a person communicates with and or relates to other people. It also affects how they make sense of the world around them. It is a spectrum condition, and I take it to mean spectrum. They can have different facets or abilities based on how autism affects the individual person. So one person with autism may seem very, very different from another person that has autism. Autism is estimated to occur 1 in 59 children within the United States today. It is most influenced by a combination of genetic and environmental factors. Because autism spectrum disorder, each person has distinct strengths and challenges. The ways in which people with autism learn, think, and problem solve can vary. Some can be very highly skilled, to some be very severely challenged. Some need significant support in their daily lives, while others may need less support, and in some cases live entirely independently without support at all. There are several factors which influence the developmental of autism: sensory sensitivities, medical issues, gastroenterology, gastrointestinal disorders, seizures, or sleep disorders. and also mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, and attention issues. Usually, autism is diagnosed or appears around ages 2 to 3, but it can be diagnosed as early as 18 months in a child that suffers from this type of disability. As educators, I think that we all need to be aware of what autism is and the types of strengths or challenges that it may produce in an individual. I also think that it does require you to have special training to better understand people with autism, and so that you are better able to help those individuals and you have a sense of what you're dealing with and maybe how to better deal with that person. I have had students that have had autism. I think it differs in each individual that I've dealt with. And I'm not even certain if their abilities seem the same to me. They all seem different. Okay, so here we have the bus driver encounter with an autistic student. And you can tell that this bus driver either has had no training with a student that was autistic or has had very limited or renewed training, if any training at all. But it also makes you wonder why this student, kind of being a nonverbal, did not have a one-on-one or someone on the bus riding with them, and why there was not someone else on the bus to help accommodate this child, that could communicate with this child and was used to the norms of this child. So we're going to go into this video now and just look at it and just kind of get an idea of maybe the focus or the areas in which we can improve in dealing with people that have mental disabilities.
Do I need to talk to Mom and Dad? No, you're not going to hit me. Knock it off. Go ahead and move.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Knock it off.
I'll sit right here.
No. You behave.
Hey, we're gonna...
You behave. I'm 16 in your city. No, you're not going to do that.
Okay.
Not on my bus. Then you behave, okay? You behave? You behave? Huh? Will you behave? Will you behave? Huh? I need a yes out of you. Stop it. Stop. No. No. No.
Get close.
I'll let you go when you give me a yes, you'll behave. Stop. Stop. Don't fight me. Quit fighting me.
Okay, Paige. You need to relax.
That's enough. I'm going to let go. And you behave. And sit still in your seat. You going to stop? Yeah, going to behave? Now sit up in your seat and behave. Now sit still. I don't expect to wrestle with you every damn time I get you on the box. Stop! You break my window, you're going to have to pay for it.
Wonder if we should tell the I don't know.
Settle.
How do you feel when you see a child treated in this manner? Do you feel differently when you realize the child has autism? Do you think that this bus driver has had any training for serving students with disabilities?
Okay, so here we have a slide that shows the autistic spectrum disorder and the different categorical disabilities based on the characteristics that that person displays, or the strengths or the challenges that that person incurs from the disability. So it starts at ADD, it goes over to ODO, and it carries on to depression. So the person can display or be dealing with a multitude of characteristics, and that is why it is so varying in people who are labeled or categorized or diagnosed with this type of disability, because it affects them in so many different ways, and the variances seem to be unlimited. We also have to the right language differences, social differences, repetitive actions that they may or may not display, and then sensory differences. So just take a look at this. It all shows different things that can be done, and then different challenges that the person may encounter. Now this side just shows a few, and there are so many when you start to look at people in the spotlight and in the sitcoms and movies that we watch who have been diagnosed with autism or autism spectrum disorder. Forrest Gump was one. Rain Man displayed a character who suffered from autism. And then The Good Doctor, which is out now, which is a sitcom, shows Dr. Sean Murphy, who also suffers with autism. And each of these people shows various strengths and then also various challenges that they encounter within their life. But those are just some of the ones that are relevant and frequent and that we hear a lot about. Okay, so recent years, there's been probably not recent years, it's probably been for a while, and I'm saying recent. But for years, there has been a misconception that autism was caused by vaccine. It was believed that thimerosal, which is a part of many vaccines, was the cause of people being diagnosed with different disorders. That has been proven that that was not the case. And the FDA has also released many studies and verifications that this is not the case. That thimerosal was removed from vaccines in 1990, and the graph that is depicted shows you that there still has been no decline in the number of people diagnosed. Currently, there is no cure for autism spectrum disorder. And so it is something that we have to learn to recognize and also appropriately try to train ourselves and modify our thinking to the degree that it affects people in how we relate to people.
Intellectual disability, or ID, once called mental retardation, is characterized by below average intelligence or mental ability and a lack of skills. Experts have divided the types of cognitive impairment of ID into 4 levels or categories: mild intellectual disability, moderate intellectual disability, severe intellectual disability, and profound intellectual disability. The different developmental disabilities include autism, behavior disorders, brain injury, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, intellectual disability, and spina bifida. As previously mentioned, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act defines ID, intellectual disability, as a disability characterized by significant limitations in both intellectual functioning and in adaptive behavior, which covers many everyday social and practical skills. This disability originates before the age of 18. The intellectual functioning of ID, also called intelligence, refers to general mental capacity, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, and so on. One way to measure intellectual functioning is an IQ test. Generally, an IQ test score of around 70 or as high as 75 indicates limitation in intellectual functioning. Adaptive behavior is the collection of conceptual, social, and practical skills that are learned and performed by people in their everyday lives. Conceptual skills include language and literacy. Social skills include interpersonal skills and social responsibility, self-esteem, and so on. Practical skills are activities of daily living, occupational skills, healthcare, and so forth. Standardized tests can also determine limitations in adaptive behavior. Join us next week as we dive deeper into the consequences of negative behaviors as discussed with an assistant principal, a behavior specialist, and an SRO.